Hello and welcome to another edition of our regular podcast on all things recycling and environmental oriented, called Recycle, Don't Be a Waster. Today we want to talk about the concept that might seem a bit too good to be true. It might seem a bit like pie in the sky, and that is, in the future, will people pay you for your waste? Will companies or the government or whoever it is, will they actually pay you cold hard cash for the waste that you produce? Obviously this, in 2021, when we record this seems preposterous. I think everybody is used to, and certainly businesses, we are all very used to paying, in some cases, quite a lot of money to get rid of our waste, and whether it goes for recycling or whatever it is. But I think this is a concept that we covered in a video a while ago, and I think we'll expand on it a little bit more today and dig into it a bit from look at the different, the arguments pro and con, and see what we think. I suppose the first thing, where does this question come from? This question comes from the concept of more and more companies they don't call themselves waste companies or recycling companies. They tend to call themselves that lovely resource recovery. You'll see it on the side of trucks and facilities. And it really, I suppose you could accuse it of being a bit of greenwashing, that a concept where you make a dirty business seem a bit more clean by wrapping it in a nice, modern and green shell. But, I think there is some truth to it. So what is... resource recovery really harks to the concept that we're digging into the rubbish, we're going through the rubbish, we're separating it out, we are recycling the valuable bits, the cardboard, the metal, some of the plastics, those sort of things, and we're using even the food waste for energy production or composting. We're using any timber for mulching and composting and stuff like that. And I suppose if you extrapolate this to the nth degree and keep it going, theoretically, the more resource you can recover, the more efficiently you recover that resource. Obviously, at the end of the day, it would become, a cash positive, and some people might compete in the market to obtain this material and to and actually pay you for it. So, I suppose at the beginning, we are already seeing aspects of this. If you have certain types of waste, you can receive cash for them or a rebate. First one's first, clearly the most obvious. In most countries, certainly in Australia, metal recycling will pay you a rebate depending on the type of metal you drop off. Certainly if it's steel, copper, those sort of metals that are extremely reusable and valuable, you will certainly receive a rebate. So yes, it's already happening. Second issue would be in the world of cardboard. Generally, certainly households will not receive a rebate or payment for cardboard, although at Waster, I'll be honest, we do get asked this question quite often. There tends to be a bit of a misconception as to how valuable cardboard is. But cardboard is valuable, but at the same time, the transport element of it often cancels out the potential for a rebate. But if you run a large industrial company, if you are baling or compacting that waste cardboard, yes, in many instances, you can receive a rebate that will potentially give you cash in hand or, reduce the overall cost. So generally a company might pay you a rebate based on the tonnage, the amount of tons of clean, compacted cardboard that they collect from you. So again, yes, that is an element where you're getting that benefit. Clean plastics in Australia, clean plastic wrap often will be collected for free. It'll be, I suppose, the value of that plastic will cancel out the collection charge for the company. And I suppose the one other category that we would mention probably is e-waste, where for some e-waste that contains, precious metals, some of them even contain silver and gold. You may have noted that at the Japanese Olympics this year, which to be honest seemed a long time ago already, they made most of the medals for the participants were made from mobile phones, recycled mobile phones, and the precious metals contained. But of course, e-waste also will contain quite a bit, lots of metal, copper, aluminium, and precious metals also, which can be valuable. So in many instances, there can be a rebate also paid for e-waste, but that generally is if you drop it off at a specialist facility where they separate. But I suppose we get into now I suppose those items we've talked about, they are valuable resources. They are stuff that can be recycled, stuff that won't be thrown out. But if we take it to stuff that tends to be more thrown away, certain countries basically they don't dump at landfill. Certain countries, and when I'm thinking here of Sweden and Japan, they tend to make, with most of the waste they have, they tend to incinerate it for the purpose of energy creation. So Sweden pretty much incinerates all the waste they produce, and in modern incineration plants, the power industry, households, cities, pretty much through that system. They're so keen on this that they actually import waste from other countries. I don't think they actually pay for the waste from other countries, but they will take it at reduced rates because to them fundamentally it is free energy to a large extent. Their facilities are modern, they're clean, they have carbon capture methods, pollution capture methods, and fundamentally they're burning this waste that otherwise would end up at landfill. So the net greenhouse gas emissions are the same. In theory, what they're doing is they're burning that the capture calories inside those, or kilojoules inside that waste. They're burning it and they're producing energy from it that if they didn't, they would have to invest in new facilities, new oil-powered, coal-powered stations, or of course invest in new hydro dams, that sort of stuff, solar energy. And I'm not sure how much solar energy there is in Northern Europe and Sweden, but maybe not the most suitable for that. So if we look at these countries, and I know a lot of people, certainly on this podcast, when it's recycling focused, a lot of people will be intuitively against the concept of incineration because it's seen as polluting, it's seen as negative for the environment, much worse than recycling. And I accept some of those arguments, but I think we'll expand on incineration in a future episode because of the ability to, it certainly is better to burn stuff for energy if you're capturing it than to let it rot away in landfill, emit the same gases, and not capture that energy. So, it's more, we got to make sure that we're comparing the negatives and the positives, and when we do that, oftentimes incineration can be a net positive. But again, that's something we'll discuss in a future episode. The other stuff that we're seeing more and more is, a lot of waste in bins, of course, is food waste, decaying waste. And anybody who, I think it's everyone knows that rotting food smells. And when rotting food smells, it's emitting methane and other greenhouse gases and other, carbon dioxide and gases of that nature, which pollute the atmosphere, but they can be burned. So these gases can be used to create energy, similar to the incineration concept. Already in Australia and in many countries, what we're doing is we're taking food waste and we're utilising that food waste for energy production. So we are letting the waste decay, capturing the gas that's produced, using that gas to burn turbines or to turn turbines, create electricity. And even today in 2021, we are powering hundreds of thousands of homes in Australia purely from this waste food. As with anything, technology improves over time. And so what we can do today, clearly in a couple of years, 5 years down the line, we'll be much more efficient. Our systems will be better. The plants that we use to do this with gas will be smaller, more accessible. And even today, we're seeing, whereas it used to be you'd have to take the food waste and ship it to a new location, what I would argue is that with the rise of what's called biofuel, whereby the food decays, creates that gas, the gas is captured. This is now happening basically in domestic residences. It's happening in houses. It's in the same way people used to have an old compost plot out the back of their garden to let grass and stuff rot away. People now can have a biofuel system which basically looks a bit like a tent. Whereby the food rots away, it emits the gas is captured, and then it can be burned to create energy. This is particularly useful, as you can imagine, in the scenario of a farm. If a farm's producing lots of waste food, if it's rural, if it's significantly removed from main roads, which obviously makes transport, etc., much more expensive, you can imagine that many farms, particularly in outback Australia, can be self-sufficient from an energy perspective. This biofuel technology, and we'll link to it on the podcast and on the video. This biofuel is now it's becoming much smaller, much easier to use, and it's suitable for many domestic homes. This will clearly increase. I think we live in a society now where people are putting more and more solar panels on their roofs. They're using that solar to heat water, to create electricity. We're doing different things with heat pumps to make our homes more energy efficient. As energy increases with the inflation, seemingly rampant inflation we're facing nowadays, this level of potentially free energy that we could have is something that a lot of people will, over time, will inevitably look at more and more. So, what we've done is we've stripped a lot of stuff. Even on this podcast, we've gone through cardboard, metals, e-waste, some plastics, and now we're into food waste. So much of what we're discussing, it's sitting there in the bin. It is valuable. It will be used, and it's, in many regards, it's much more green, environmentally effective, environmentally positive than the old-fashioned method of just dumping it. So I would argue, yes, over the next 5 to 10 years, we will see more industry, more business coming into this space. We will professionalize the whole scenario. We will categorize and work out how much value there is in these materials, and we will. I would argue that certainly standalone homes that are houses, private homes that are outside main towns, will almost certainly be utilizing biofuel themselves. This will, of course, reduce the need for garbage truck collection and all that sort of stuff. So I would forecast that in the next 5 to 10 years, people will be less keen on throwing their waste out, which, I'm not going to say that people will come around buying your food from you, but I could see, if you were a large producer of these materials, a farmyard producing lots of waste food, people potentially will pay you for that waste food to produce the energy and feed that into the national grid or their own property. It could be that one farm in a local area goes around, collects the other food waste and utilizes that to create energy, and then potentially others could buy that back from them. So there's an almost once the technology improves, becomes more widespread, and we move from one big national grid producer with huge facilities, we potentially move to smaller facilities where we decrease the need to transport, we decrease the need for facilities in general, and obviously then we save on fuel in transporting this stuff. It could be a win-win. So will people ever purchase or pay you for your waste? Yeah, I think it is plausible. I think certainly we'll move towards a scenario where it's much more cost neutral. It could be a free service or getting close to free, maybe with volatility, etc. And for larger producers, maybe in more industrial companies, it could be in the scenario where people are paying them for their waste. People are paying them for that food waste, and it could be a new revenue stream. So I think everything changes, and this is certainly an economic change with the whole movement towards reducing greenhouse emissions, reducing new carbon-based fuels, cutting back on oil, on coal, on those heavier polluting fuels. I certainly expect that biofuel it's inevitably going to grow as a energy source, and as time goes on, it will be. I would forecast that any large farm, any large private home that has a garden, anyone who has a compost patch now will probably have a biofuel reactor in their back garden over the next 5 to 20 years. I think this fits in with lots of trends that we're seeing, almost going off the grid. We're seeing, whereas it used to be you needed broadband cables, now a lot of it's, 3G and 4G and 5G. So it's through it moves through the air. We don't need actual cabling. We used to be hooked up to even cables for our television sets. Now again, those aren't required. And a lot of these things we're seeing where we are moving off the grid and fragmenting the actual, it sounds negative, fragmenting the structure of society, but in some way it gives freedom and independence also to people that, if you can maintain your own property, you're standalone. So again, there'll be a lot of movement towards that, I forecast, and that will be a trend of the next 15 to 20 years. So again, I, like everybody else, looks forward to the day when we can pay someone to pay us to take our waste. And I look forward to hearing your comments, seeing what you have to think about this concept, or any feedback. As always, like and subscribe, comment, because I believe that helps us rank better, helps us spread our message. And until next time, recycle, don't be a waster.